Namaste and welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity. And we're going to continue answering questions from the jar on this lovely November morning. The sun is shining through. I love November light for some reason. I used to think it quite dreary when all the leaves fell off the trees and you seen the bare branches stretching to the skies, and the skies always seemed kind of gray and silvery because they didn't have the golden leaves to reflect off of. But now when I look out, well, today is especially sunny, so it doesn't really count. But I like that silver light now. I find it's just a reflection of aging almost, and that beautiful wisdom that comes with it. Wow, did I ever go on a ramble to start this off? Let me get my question out so I am not rambling again. I'm going to take a deep breath first. And when I take a deep breath, I just do that to see if I can, like a cue to get my ego out of the way, that part of me that thinks it knows everything and wants to answer the question from that state of knowledge, to the part of me that just questions and wants to know for reasons of true truth, I guess. Wow, what am we saying? This is the question I pulled out. Let me see if I can make it out. Are you saying we need to suffer in order to wake up? Are you saying we need to suffer in order to wake up? Now, that is quite a question. I will start my timer. Are you saying we need to question in order to wake up? I'm going to say yes and no to that question as my answer. And again, I don't know. I mean, I'm just sharing with you what I've learned and what resonates within me as my truth, which of course cannot be validated or verified in any way. So it's just take it with a grain of salt, I guess I'm saying everything I have to say. There's much more wiser people out there than I am, and there's much more people that have reflected more than I have. So from my own reflection and inner reflection and understanding of things, I would say yes and no. We do need to suffer in order to maintain that state of awakening. First of all, what is awakening? Awakening to me is the waking up to the truth, the true truth of what life is all about, what we are all about, who we are at the deepest level, not just in this materialistic viewpoint that we have of this physicality. We are more than our bodies and our minds, and understanding that we are spiritual beings. And I know people hate the word spiritual, they think it's woo-woo, but to me spiritual is non-physical, more than physical, more than body, more than matter. So we are more than matter in these bodies of matter, which in themselves are only what? 0.1% matter. 99.9% of these bodies we're seeing are space, right? So just understanding truths like that, and understanding who we are at the deepest level and what life is really all about, when we get away from the mindset that we're these little me's and these little dramas, and our focus is so on these little me's, and we expand that view to life as a whole and the world around us and all beings, not just humans, but all beings, and this perfect reality that we have yet to come to understand, or this matrix, some people would call it, the simulation, this whatever the quantum physicists are coming up with now, whatever it is. It's just this understanding of truth. So it is understanding something deeper. So that is what awakening is to me. And do we need to suffer in order to reach that? And I say no, yes and no, but the no part of that would reflect that some people just wake up suddenly. Some people are born awake. You see those people that are spiritually connected to this ether or this essence that we can't quite understand because it's beyond matter. Some people wake up knowing things, okay? They are born knowing things. Some people have sudden awakenings in kundalini or meditation. They just transcend so far, like Thomas Campbell, for example. He's a famous physicist who wrote My Big Toe, the theory of everything. And he had a spontaneous awakening during a transcendental meditation. We know other people who have spent a great deal of their lives, like the Buddha, for example, sitting in meditation, waiting and looking for the truth, questioning, and stilling the mind, because that's the only way we'll truly understand, is when we get past our ego minds and all this busy monkey mind that gets in the way of us understanding what is really there, because that part of our mind, that activity of the brain that we're all so lost in, with the firing of the amygdala, putting us in stress and fight and flight all the time, and just thoughts after thoughts about little me and little me's drama on how we're going to cope, stop us from reaching those higher states or those deeper states of brainwave functioning, which the Buddhist monks, for example, after years can reach. And when we still the mind that way, or we can get that way through psychedelics sometimes too, because we used to think the psychedelics stimulate the mind, but they do just the opposite. They still the mind so that part beneath can come up to the surface and we can see it and understand it. So when we still the mind enough, when we get there, we can see the truth. It may come to the surface. Not for all of us, and it is a process. It took the Buddha many years underneath the Bodhi tree to get to that level of understanding and awareness. But once you reach that, there is no going back. Once every level of awakening we reach, there is no going back to the pre-awakening stage. It's always a movement forward. So some people, and of course Christ was born awake. So we are born, some people do not need to suffer. Well, of course Christ suffered, but you know what I'm saying. We don't need to reach that level of understanding and awareness. We don't always need to suffer. Some people have a spontaneous awakening. But for most of us, that suffering is the catalyst. And this was also the catalyst for the Buddha, because he was suffering when he was questioning why were people suffering. He was wondering about suffering and, why does it exist? But when that suffering reaches a point in our lives where we say, oh my gosh, this can't be it. This is too much. I have to end this suffering. And that may lead us, we realize, into realizing that the external world and all the things we were doing to end suffering, grabbing here and getting this and attaining this and pushing that away and, staying in a safety zone where we're not exposed to all the experiences of this world. When we realize that doesn't work in stopping us from suffering, then we may begin to go through the process of awakening. We may seek the answers, the truth that exists all along within us and not outside of us. And we may go that route in order to wake up. So I'd say yes and no to that question. Some people are very fortunate they can awaken spontaneously. But for most of us, the suffering can act as a catalyst for taking us deeper, away from the superficial way of handling pain and our experience of living, to the deeper meaning that will allow us to see that the peace and the joy and the bliss, the Satchidananda, has been within us all along. So thanks to those people who have suffered a great deal and who've sat for hours and hours in meditation reflecting on the human mind and the human experience, we now see that there is a path that we can take that is not outward bound, but inward bound, that can help us to get to that state of awakening. So awakening is just waking up to the truth of who we are and the truth of what life is all about. And with that truth, we will find that essence of joy and peace and love and Satchidananda that is with all of us. We'll have a free flow of Shakti once the samskaras are removed through the process. And we will awaken to that truth. But suffering can be the catalyst that takes us there. I know it has been for me. Like I started this journey because, hey man, I had some trauma like most people in their lives. And I had a hard time coping with it. So I thought nothing out there seemed to be working. My life just didn't seem to be working out. And I said, okay, that's it. I got to find a way. And so I start looking inward. And I start, first of all, with the psychology realm of understanding the human mind, and then the physiological man. I was always fascinated with anatomy. From there, I went deeper into the understanding of, I only use the word spirituality, which is a very woo-woo term to me. Like I said, it just means understanding the truth of who we are, beyond what we've been conditioned to believe we are, which is matter, in this materialistic paradigm that most of us are living in. So that being said, I began to explore the inner world like the rishis did. And that's what fascinated me about yoga, not just the physical component or the hatha component of yoga or the, pranayama, the breath component of yoga, but for all of yoga. Every one of those 8 limbs fascinated me because it allowed me to see that we are connected to something so much greater than what we're focusing our attention. Most of us are focusing our attention on. And when we pull that attention away from the little me and the little me drama and we reflect it backward to the source, then suffering just seems to get less and less and less until we realize that though there's challenge and pain and, sorrows in life, that is a part of the human experience. Suffering does not have to be. Suffering is a totally different thing. There is a difference between pain and suffering. Suffering is our reaction to those challenges, reaction to those, 10,000 sorrows that life is bound to send our way. And it is a reaction to what is. So this suffering can get to a point where we learn to accept it as a catalyst for change. And we start to reflect back on the roots of that suffering, which is our desire, according to the Buddha, our preferencing, our pushing away and our pushing down, things that are painful for the human experience, for us as human beings in this experience. When we're focused on little me and little me's drama, we expand our viewpoint and we begin to look mostly inward at the reality of who we are. So suffering can be it doesn't necessary for everybody. Some people are fortunate, they will just wake up, maybe as teachers for the rest of us. And for others of us, it will require suffering and a desire to be free of suffering that will lead us to the Eightfold Path, according to the Buddha, or whatever practice you're in that will take you from suffering. An inner reflection mostly, an examination of who and what you are. Well, my time is up. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day. Namaste.